Hey, everybody. Welcome to Odd and Untold, the podcast where we talk about all things strange and spooky. And just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Christmas was yesterday. I'm actually recording this on Christmas morning, but hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and wonderful holidays, whatever you celebrate, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah. For my UK friends, today is Boxing Day, so happy Boxing Day. I'm not quite sure what that is. I'm an American, so I just think of, Mike Tyson and other guys just punching each other, and sounds like a pretty cool holiday to me. Used to go to Golden Gloves with my dad and just watch people box, and people in the audience just screaming, "Hit him, hit him!" Good advice for a boxer at a boxing match. So happy holidays to everybody. Just wanted to say that before we move on. And today I'm doing something just a little different. Back when I had my blog, the occult section, every year around this time, I would do a year in review, and I would just talk about some of my favorite blog posts or the most popular blog posts or just like funny keywords that brought people to my blog. And it was always something like ghost orgy or weird things like that. And I was like, why is that like the most popular search term that returns people to my site? Because I don't talk about ghost orgies all that much. But anyway, I did a year in review last year for the channel, and I was just basically showing a lot of clips, and it was very cool, but it was very time consuming. I had to kind of find the clips I wanted and re-edit them into an episode, and it was just a lot of rehashed video clips. I threw a few things in there that didn't make it to air, mainly because we were either talking about it off air, or they were bloopers, or they were just things that I cut at the time for time and then decided to kind of show in the year in review. And this year, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to kind of uh, turn this back onto you guys, the audience, and thank you. So I'm going to be talking about some of our most popular episodes from this past year, the top five. And I'm going to be reading some comments that you guys have left either via email or in YouTube comments, questions, things like that, because I can't always get to answer the questions as thoroughly as I would like. A lot of these comments, the first couple I'm going to read are a little bit long, and I would like to just kind of expand on that and talk about my thoughts on those comments and just other comments that you guys have left or questions. And I just kind of want to highlight some cool things from this year and answer some questions. So this is all about you guys this year. It's all about the audience and just this journey that you've taken with me that I really appreciate that you've stuck with me, guys. Uh, so some of the commenters are people who've only commented once and I've never heard from them again, and others are frequent commenters. So that's awesome. You know that we know we have a fan base. We know that people kind of tune in every week and engage in this dialogue with us, and I love that. And again, some of these comments are not so nice, but I'm not going to try to focus too much on the negative ones. But I do want to address certain things because I feel like they do need addressing. And yeah, so we will take it from there. So I'm going to start with our top five episodes, which these got tons of views, and I don't know why, because my average episode on YouTube and even on like the audio only podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I get usually like 150, 200 listens or views, whatever you want to, whichever metric you want to use. But these got like into the thousands. So very cool for me. Very flattering for me. I appreciate you guys tuning in and listening. And I never quite know what's going to be a hit because one thing is a hit, and then I kind of try to replicate that a few weeks or months later, and it gets like 54 views. So I don't know. I don't know why one gets, 4,000 and one gets 50. But I'm going to go over those shows right now and just kind of, just like I said, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and making these shows our most popular for the year, because this kind of tells me what you guys like, what you're interested in, and what I should be doing more of. And I think it's Bigfoot stuff. You guys seem to love the Bigfoot stuff, so I may have to focus on that because a lot of our other shows about ghosts and UFOs didn't do as well. But let's talk about the top five. All right, so coming in at number five is Bigfoot in the Adirondacks, episode 45. And this was just an episode I had done because I camp in the Adirondacks a lot with my buddy and co-host Josh. Josh hasn't been on in a while, but I'm hoping to get him back on soon. We've been talking about it, and I have a few ideas for some shows that I want him to come back on. But we camp in the Adirondacks often, and it is well known for Bigfoot sightings up there. The Northville Placid Trail, Whitehall, New York, that whole region is just really known for Bigfoot sightings. And this was just an episode that I had done reading some reports from the BFRO that had happened up in the Adirondack region, kind of near places where we camped. And this episode got 1,082 views on YouTube so far. So, and it's really had a resurgence in the past couple of weeks. I don't know why, but it kind of was popular and then nobody was watching it for a while. And now, again, people are watching it. So, very cool. So I'm glad people are enjoying that. Again, it's a Bigfoot. So that tends to be our, sort of more popular episode type on here. I don't know why I try to do like a nice mix of things, Bigfoot and UFOs and ghosts and other weird mysteries like glitches in the Matrix or bodies on Mount Everest. But the Bigfoot stuff, just people go wild for. So Bigfoot in the Adirondacks, episode 45 is our number five. All right, this one was surprising to me. Number four, the Cayuga Lake Monster, episode 52. And this one has gotten 1,423 views on YouTube. And I'm just going by YouTube metrics here. The audio versions always tend to do a little bit less than the YouTube, but I'm just going by the YouTube views. I am not a big lake monster guy. I don't really like lake monsters. Um, I mean, I love all cryptids. I've read a lot about lake monsters. There's just something about lake monsters that doesn't really appeal to me. When I was younger, they did. I was really into like the Loch Ness Monster and the Champ and other things like that. And the Cayuga Lake Monster, I did an episode on this simply because Rebecca and I had gone camping up in Ithaca near Cayuga Lake. And one afternoon while we were up there, we were in town. We wanted to get food and some ice cream and stuff. And we just kind of sat at the southern end of Cayuga Lake, and we were right on the water. We sat on a swing, and it was just a beautiful day and beautiful view. And when I got home, I said, "Oh, let me," because it was a huge lake. I mean, an enormous lake. Uh, so when I got home, I said, "I wonder if there's any like weird things about Cayuga Lake, like Bigfoot sightings or UFOs or a lake monster." And there is Old Greenie, the Cayuga Lake Monster. So I did an episode on that, even though I'm not really big on lake monsters. But this episode blew up and got a lot of comments and a lot of views. So I appreciate you guys. I will probably be doing some more Lake Monster episodes coming up in the future because it does seem like something that people are hungry for. So I will do some more Lake Monsters, some lesser known ones. Again, and I'll get into this in a bit, but when I started this channel, I really didn't want to rehash stories that were very popular. I didn't want to talk about the Loch Ness Monster. What can I contribute to that legend that hasn't already been said far more eloquently by far more educated people and informed people than myself about the Loch Ness Monster? I really have nothing to add to that. Patterson-Gimlin footage, I have nothing to add to that. It's been discussed to death. If something new comes up, I will talk about these things, and you'll see that in a bit. But if I'm going to focus on lake monsters, I'm going to do some like lesser known ones. I don't want to do Champ I mean, I might do Champ just because my buddy and co-host John goes up to Lake Champlain and he actually just got me a book. I'll have to show you guys that later about Vermont and some of the weird creatures up there. But I would really rather focus on the untold sort of stories, the lesser known cryptids and creatures and ghost stories and things like that. I don't want to rehash things that people, again, far more qualified than myself, have already done. So, Cayuga Lake Monster, number four on our list. So, very awesome. So, for number three, we were looking at episode 38, and this is Ghosts, Bigfoot, and Alaskan Cryptids. And this is with researcher Heidi Worley from Alaska. And I had been friends with Heidi on Facebook, and I just kind of put out a call, which I do every now and then, just if anybody has any stories and wants to be on the show, to contact me. And she did. So decided to have her on the show. And her episode, 1,407 views. I don't know why that's showing up. All right. So the YouTube algorithm here is showing that it's got less views, but it's showing up a higher ranking. So I don't know if the numbers are a little bit off. Anyway, Heidi was awesome. She was a great guest. She had really cool stories. She told a couple of personal ghost stories. We talked Bigfoot and we talked other just like cryptids and weirdness from Alaska, uh, the lake monster and the otter man and the black pyramid and like really cool stuff. And she was just such a fun guest. I had to have her on again, so she actually did come on again for another episode. I think it was episode 43 or 44, I forget. But she was on just a couple weeks later because I was like, we did this episode and we had so much fun, and I had to bring her on again. And I know she's been toying with the idea of starting her own podcast, which I fully endorse. I fully think she should. She's great. She's great on camera. She's been in some of the Small Town Monsters documentaries, very knowledgeable researcher, and she's up there in Alaska and just had some really cool ghost stories, really cool Bigfoot stories, and just really, really well versed in the cryptids up there. And again, we don't really hear about a lot of Alaskan high strangeness. We here in the States, we kind of tend to focus on the lower 48, and we don't really talk about Alaska. And there's a lot of cool stuff and a lot of weird stuff happening up there. A lot of cool stories. So she really brought it for that one. And so Heidi, thank you for coming on. That was an awesome episode, one of our most popular. And that one just like right away, right out the gate, that one skyrocketed. Got tons of views. So check that one out if you haven't seen it. That is Ghosts, Bigfoot, and Alaskan Cryptids, episode 38. So thank you, Heidi. Okay, coming in at number 4, and this one has really surprised me. This is the Patterson-Gimlin film Stabilized Using AI, episode 42. And this one, the view count on this is astonishing to me. 4,191 views. And again, I know there's YouTube channels out there with many more views than I have, but as somebody who's been doing this a little over a year and who does not really promote my channel, and I do like one video a week, to get this many hits is very, very, very cool for me. And again, I appreciate all you guys tuning in. As I said a few moments ago, I really don't like rehashing popular stories. I mean, the Patterson-Gimlin film is the pinnacle of Bigfoot stories. Most people, even if they're not into cryptozoology, they know the image of Patty. They know when they think of Bigfoot, that's what you're thinking of, is that Bigfoot in that pose, the Patty pose. So even if you're not into cryptozoology or the paranormal, you know the Patterson-Gimlin film. But Scott and I, we wanted to kind of, I guess there was like a new AI stabilization of the film. And people had tried to stabilize it before, and it was pretty cool. But this was done using AI, artificial intelligence, and it's a really interesting look at the film. And we just wanted to kind of go over that because, like I said, I have nothing really new to add to the story. Roger Patterson has said his piece before he passed away. Bob Gimlin is still out there talking about it. Other people have interviewed these guys. Other people have done the research, worked on the footage, worked on the stills. There's nothing I could really add to it. But the AI stuff I kind of was like really interested in and wanted to discuss it with Scott because I think it really shows a much better look at this really famous footage. And you guys seem to have loved this episode. So over 4,000 views. So thank you. Again, Bigfoot. People love Bigfoot. Bigfoot is big views. So thank you guys. And we will move on to our number 1. Okay, so coming in at number 1 is our most popular, yet most divisive and controversial episode that we've done to date. It is episode 32, the Sasquatch Chronicles controversy. So in this episode, and this was Scott's idea, not trying to put the blame on him, but Scott comes up with these cool show ideas. The host of the Sasquatch Chronicles podcast, Wes Germer, started his show basically because he had a story about seeing a group of Sasquatch with his brother in Washington State years ago, and he wanted to kind of put out a podcast, and he brings on guests every week. Very cool show. I listen to it almost every week. I mean, some of the episodes I can't really get into. They're just a little too weird, but a lot of the stories are really cool, so I do try to listen to almost every episode. I like Wes. I think he sounds like, he seems like a really nice guy. But a report went around a few years ago that kind of analyzed his story that he had told, because he had certain details in his story that were provably false. Weather conditions, the condition of the moon, the phase of the moon, the location, the GPS coordinates he gave was all sort of provably wrong. And there was a lot of stuff in this report And Scott had kind of seen it on one of his Facebook groups that he belonged to. And he says, "Hey, Jay, like, let's take a look at this and kind of break it down and see if they got anything right, if they got anything wrong, and just kind of analyze it." So that's what we did. And like I said, there were things provably wrong with his story. He mentioned a full moon, and there was no full moon that night. He mentioned clear skies and seeing the stars, and in Washington, where he said he had seen these Bigfoot on this specific night, it was cloudy and like foggy. So it was not a clear night. So, not a clear night, no full moon. He had given coordinates as to exactly where this took place. And he said it was like on Yakult Mountain. And people typed in the coordinates and it was like 10 miles off. So, lots of little things about his story just weren't adding up. And so we discussed that, and we discussed like other show hosts who had kind of been with him, William Jevning and Shannon LeGros and other people whose names I forget right now, not as popular in the field, but even his own brother, he used to be co-host on the show. And all of these people left, ostensibly under suspicion that they doubted his story and they doubted his credibility. And so Scott and I analyzed the report, and we kind of went through point by point, and we were trying to point things out. And some of the things we had to agree on with the report, that, if there was no full moon, if there was no clear sky, if the coordinates were wrong, how did he see these creatures? And, it's one of these things where if different parts of your story don't add up, then how can we believe the most extraordinary part? If he couldn't get the moon right or the weather right, why should we believe that he saw these creatures? And that was kind of our premise, that we were just kind of going through this. And there were other things in the report too that we sort of defended Wes on, that a lot of his fans did not listen to. They didn't want to hear that part where, he has an LLC. And we were like, well, yeah, like he's making a lot of money off his podcast. And why wouldn't he want to protect himself by forming an LLC, limited liability corporation, to sort of prevent himself personally from being sued over anything that happened with the show? So there were things we defended him on, and we did try to play devil's advocate, and, maybe he had the date wrong, or maybe he had this wrong. And we got attacked by by many of his followers in the comments. If you go to the show, again, it's episode 32. It's got 132 comments currently. A lot of them I couldn't even publish because they were homophobic, they were transphobic, they were insulting, full of profanities, death threats. So his fans really came after us for simply analyzing a story, which we do with everything that we talk about on the show. And I'm going to get to that in the user comments in a little bit, but we really try to present a fair and balanced look at things. We don't take things just for granted, and just because Wes is famous and successful doesn't mean he is immune to scrutiny. But a lot of his fans seem to think that. They think like, no, we should just believe. And if you read the comments, you'll see a lot of people just saying, just leave him alone. And, so what if he was mistaken? Like, he still saw Bigfoot. And for me, that's just not good enough. For me, it's just if a politician tells a lie or tells us a story that doesn't sound true, we're going to look into it. I mean, any major world event we've looked into, was this a false flag? Was there some sort of cover up? We tend to not believe what people tell us, and especially when it doesn't make sense. And if you can just quickly Google and say, okay, he's saying on this date there was a full moon. If you can quickly Google phase of the moon on this date and it's saying, no, it's not a full moon. In fact, it's a little sliver of a moon, and the moon would have been below the horizon at the time that he saw this. So it wouldn't have even been in the sky. And then the weather conditions, once the story starts falling apart, it makes it very difficult to believe the story at all. So if he, people are like, well, so what if he got the moon wrong? And so what if he got the weather wrong? And so what if he got the location wrong? And we did an episode on this, paranormal belief, faith versus fact. And it was Scott and Josh and myself, and we were just talking about this. And Josh brought up this argument of, if the pillars of the foundation of your story is false, then the main story is probably false. Like, so if all these little details are wrong, how can we believe the story? And again, we weren't saying that Wes was lying. We kept reiterating that. Like, we're not saying that he was lying. Like, maybe he got the date wrong. Maybe he was embellishing. I don't know. But All I know is I've interviewed some people for this show. I've talked about my own stories on this show. And if I don't remember something exactly, I don't say it was definitely a full moon or it was definitely a clear night and I could see stars. Like if I can't remember the phase of the moon, I say I don't remember. If I don't remember the exact date, I just say, yeah, I know it was like summer because I was camping. So I know maybe it was July or maybe it was August, maybe it was beginning. I don't know. So I will very clearly say I don't know. And that's not to protect myself. It's just a lot of these dates I don't remember. But with him, it was him and his brother, and I guess their grandfather had just died. So they should have been able to sort of pinpoint the date better. But anyway, again, this was a very divisive episode. We had a lot of people supporting us and saying yes and saying bad things about Wes, which we did not want to encourage. But we had a lot of people on there saying bad things about us. And like I said, if you want to check it out, there's 132 comments and they kind of go both ways as far as attacking us or supporting us. But just shocking to see people just wanting to blindly accept someone's story simply because they're famous. And that's scary to me. And it's not what science is. Science is supposed to be, let's look at this and let's examine this. And it's not that anybody has an axe to grind or anybody's trying to take someone else down. It's just, it was interesting that someone put a whole report together. And Scott and I just wanted to look at the report and say, let's see what these people had to say. And can we verify what they're saying? Or is this just an attack? And it wasn't. A lot of the stuff they had to say was provably true, and his story was provably false. So there you have it. And doesn't mean his podcast isn't any good. He's got a wonderful podcast. I love it, but his initial story falls apart. So that's all it is. So those are our top 5 episodes. Now I'm going to get into your guys' comments and questions. So before that, like I said, I'm just drinking coffee. It's Christmas morning. This is my leather mug that I got from the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair. So it's very cool. It keeps phasing out here because I don't have a green screen yet, but cool leather mug. Having a big cup of coffee because I am tired. But yeah, let's get on to your comments. All right, so this first comment comes from user AAO, and this is from the episode Bigfoot Sightings near Gettysburg. And I really like this comment, and it's long, but I really wanted to address this one because I think there's some really good points here. So I'm going to read his comment. Hi, I love your channel and I love your stories, but the only thing that bothers me a little bit is, and I know that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and I do like the way that you are a skeptic because there are hoaxers and liars, but it just seems that whenever you talk about your Bigfoot stories that you think everyone is mistaken or that there is some reason that they have seen what they have said they have seen and that it's probably not Bigfoot. Do you ever think that your channel might get more followers if you weren't such a skeptic and that you believed people when they tell their stories? I can tell you that I have seen Bigfoot, and I have stared right into her eyes face to face when I was stuck in a tree, and she held me out of it when I was 8 years old. It was in the 80s, and I am not mistaken about what was touching me and about what helped me out of the tree and what I saw. I actually thought it was a giant hairy lady because I did not know what Bigfoot was back then. My story is a lot more intense than this. This is just a little bit of it. I know I could never convince you, but if my eyes could take pictures, I would love to share them with you. Congratulations on your 75th episode. I'm glad I can help support your channel. So thank you. This is a wonderful comment. We don't always have to agree on things, but he's being very respectful here and asking a very legitimate question. So I just want to break this one down a little bit. So first, I approach everything skeptically. Now, that doesn't mean I don't believe in these things or that I'm not interested in these things or that I'm trying to dismiss them out of hand. And I don't think I do that with every story. I think there are some stories that it's very easy to say, all right, this person may have just seen a bear, or they may have just heard a fox screaming, because some of the stories, there's not enough evidence to say this was definitely Bigfoot. Someone's telling a story where they heard tree knocks, and that's it. I'm not really going to be convinced. Now, and I always try to say this, like that doesn't mean it wasn't Bigfoot, but for me personally, there's not enough evidence there to say that it was. So for all of my stories, and forgive me if I don't do this with every story I tell, but I really try to play devil's advocate and look at both sides of it. I try to present both sides. I'm not trying to convince anyone that Bigfoot does exist or that it doesn't exist or whatever it is, UFOs or whatever. I mean, he's talking about Bigfoot specifically. But that's not my job. My job is to kind of present the stories and present my thoughts, and that means presenting both sides of it. So if I think that something could have been a bear, or could have been other people in the woods, or could have been a misidentification, I'm going to say so. And there's plenty of stories where I say, wow, that was really interesting. And I'll never say that that was definitely Bigfoot. I'll never say something was definitely a ghost, but I will say that was interesting. That's a cool story because that really could have been Bigfoot. And I can't, you have stories where people see, an 8 foot tall thing on two legs chasing deer. Clearly not a bear, clearly not a man in a suit. So what was it? Again, I'll never say it was definitively Bigfoot, but I will give those stories credit and say, yes, this is a good story. This is a good, solid Bigfoot story that would be very tough for skeptics to kind of poke holes in because it is what it is. And you can say it was a bear or a deer or a man in a ghillie suit. Uh, so I really do try to balance that. And some stories I'm going to like kind of dismiss and say, this just sounds like someone with an overactive imagination, or this doesn't have enough evidence to say what it was. Other stories, yeah, very interesting. I can't say that it was Bigfoot. And again, the stories that don't have a lot of evidence, I can't say that it wasn't Bigfoot. But if you don't see what was yelling or knocking on the tree or throwing rocks, like you don't know that it was definitively Bigfoot. So that's part one. Part two of this, um, I think this is interesting. Do you ever think that your channel might get more followers if you weren't such a skeptic and that you believe people when they tell their stories? Yes, absolutely. Um, and Scott and I were talking about this recently because a couple of the channels that we watch on YouTube that used to be very grounded and skeptical and practical, pragmatic, just they have changed. And now, instead of just telling stories and saying, hey, this could have been Bigfoot, maybe it wasn't. Now they're filming spotlights and being like, oh, there's an alien mothership, and they're losing followers. They're losing their, sort of smarter followers, and they're just gaining followers who just believe anything that they see. And you could take a picture of the woods and draw some circles in it and be like, oh, there's 12 Bigfoot, and one of them's holding a baby, and the other one's a grandma Bigfoot, and this one's climbing a tree, and this one's got a crutch. And like, I don't want those types of fans. I want fans who think critically and can separate a good story that has something truly weird about it versus what do we have to throw away? What kind of story is just kind of silly and someone is doing it simply for clicks? I'm not here just to get clicks. Like, I make no money off my channel. I have no desire to make money off my channel. I know YouTube runs ads during my videos. I get none of that money. I don't do this as a job. I have a full-time job. I will never be doing this as my full-time job. I do this because I enjoy it. I do this because I enjoy interacting with the audience. I enjoy bringing these stories to people, and that is it. I'm not looking to get a certain amount of subscribers. If it happens, that's great. That's great. Like, but I want to be true to myself, honest to myself, and I am a skeptic. So I will never change and start doing weird UFO videos and filming planes from my backyard and saying, "Oh, look, there's an alien mothership," and uh, it's just not my style. I believe that there are things in this world that we don't understand, and I would like to get to the bottom of that mystery. And I think if you're a grifter, if you're just putting stuff on YouTube and saying, "Here's an alien mothership," or here's definitive proof of Bigfoot, and these things are clearly fake or manipulated or photoshopped, uh, I think that's insincere and disingenuous, and I have no interest in that. My goal here is to bring you legitimate spooky stories, to give you both sides of it, what I think it could be, and let you guys make up your own mind and say, oh, okay, like Jason made a good point, and I believe him. Or Jason made a good point the other way, and I believe that. Or Jason made no good points, and I still believe my own thing. I'm not here to sway you. I'm here to sort of present things and give you my thoughts. And that's why I never say something is evidence, or I never say anything is proof. I never say this is definitively a ghost or a Bigfoot or a UFO. It's just, I don't know. None of us knows. So, um, yeah, I will never go to the weird stuff and try to gain new followers that way. I will continue doing this. And AAO, I don't know your real name, but I'm very interested that you had a Bigfoot sighting, and I would love to hear your story. And from what you're telling us here, this sounds like you were stuck in a tree and some hairy woman helped you out of the tree. This sounds like a really interesting story, and it's not something that I would, as a skeptic, just dismiss, because it's not like you just sitting on your back porch and you heard a howl and you said, "Oh, that was definitely Bigfoot." Because lots of things in the woods howl and they can sound ungodly. But if you're telling me that you were in a tree and some hairy humanoid woman came over and helped you out of the tree, you laid eyes on this thing touched you. You know, it's a first-hand account. It's not just hearing something or seeing something in the distance. You know, this is something that clearly affected you. So if you'd like to come on the show, email me. All the information is in the description below. My email is there, jason@oddanduntold.com. But would love to talk to you about this. So I would not dismiss your account outright. And again, I try not to do that too often, except if the story is just worthy of that, of just being like, no, this is ridiculous. So just wanted to talk about this. And I'm going to get to another comment that is very similar, and it references the Cayuga Lake Monster episode. So let me get to that comment. Okay, so this is a very long comment, but I think it should be said, and it addresses similar things, skepticism. And this one isn't directed at me necessarily. She just kind of says this is to the public at large. But you could read this comment on the Cayuga Lake Monster episode. And this is from Naomi Serafina. So I'll read her comment. It's long, so just bear with me. But she makes really good points here. The facts which all would-be skeptics and debunkers would do well to keep in mind are these. Whenever you choose to disbelieve the testimony of a sincere eyewitness, you are not only impugning the honesty and/or intelligence of another person, probably a person you have never met and have no excuse to discredit automatically, you are also taking the stance that you, who were not present for the events described, somehow know more about said events than does the person who witnessed them. It is to say that one's own ignorance somehow makes him more of an authority on an event than the people who were present, and whom therefore know more than he does. It is an ugly position to put oneself in, yet few scoffers seem to realize this. The other fact to keep in mind is that most people would never risk their reputations by concocting wild lies about imaginary animals or phenomena. If a witness declares an event to have transpired, then something like that almost certainly did transpire. I would also add that the usual nonsense about the witnesses maybe having had too much to drink is a cheap, stupid piece of sophistry that deserves a smack in the face. Alcohol is not a hallucinogen and never has been. End of that non-starter. I'm directing these comments at the public at large because I am sick and tired of the supercilious tone that commentators seem so fond of taking whenever they refer to the reports of the sightings of unusual phenomenon. If you weren't there, then the people who were know a lot more about what happened than you do. In reference to the general tone of this video, I would like to encourage anybody interested in the phenomenon of unknown animals in lakes and other bodies of water to read The Domain of Lake Monsters by John Kirk, as well as Monsters and Marine Mysteries by Max Hawthorne. Also, I would add that before one publicly comments on the viability of a particular fauna in a particular biome, one should actually do some serious research. If you were to do so, you would discover that there is an ample food supply to support a population of marine predators in each of the lakes mentioned in this video. It is also worth noting that all of the Finger Lakes are part of an interconnected water system woven together by streams, rivers, and canals. No underground tunnels are needed. If animals wished to move about that region via the waterways, they could likely go nearly anywhere they pleased. That's all for now. Best of luck. There's a whole world of wonderful things waiting out there for you to learn. So yeah, Naomi makes really good points here. And I think there's two sides of this coin as well. And I always try to say this, and I've mentioned this specifically with like Dogman sightings, because I think there are a lot of things that people will see sometimes and they can sound unbelievable. And even me as someone who believes in things like Bigfoot or UFOs, there are certain things that people see sometimes that is even too much for me. And I never try to discredit those witnesses. I always try to say, like, they saw something. These people are crying, these people are visibly shaken. I don't think they're lying. Do I necessarily think they saw Dogman? Not necessarily, but I think they saw something. So we have to be very careful with eyewitness testimony. And this just goes for courts. In criminal cases, you could have three witnesses to a crime and they will all describe the suspect slightly differently. Why is it? They're all seeing the same person. So why are some saying he had longish hair and some people are saying it was shorter and some people are saying he was 6'3" and other people saying he was 5'11"? We all have different perceptions. We all have our different experiences. So things like that need to be taken into account. That just because we question someone's encounter doesn't mean we disbelieve that they saw something that freaked them out. Now, was that a lake monster? I don't know. Was it Bigfoot? I don't know. They saw something that freaked them out. And to me, that's enough. That's enough to sort of say we need to investigate this further. It doesn't mean I automatically believe them. It doesn't mean I disbelieve them. But if someone sees a large eel in the water or a gar or a large sturgeon and they think they're seeing a lake monster, that needs to be delved into more deeply. What were the conditions? Was it nighttime? Was it foggy out? How long did you see this creature for? You're saying it was 10 seconds. Was it really 10 seconds or was it 2 seconds or was it 30 seconds? There's a lot of things to consider when you're wondering whether or not you should believe somebody. So uh, I do agree with her partially here that most people are not lying about this stuff. Of course, there are hoaxers. Of course, there are liars, as AAO mentioned in the previous comment. But I think the vast majority of people, if they're telling you a story, they believe they saw what they said they saw. Most people aren't going to just come out and say, yeah, I saw a UFO and it looked like. Why would they lie about that? Again, there are liars, there are hoaxers. That's not up for debate. But I do believe that most people, if they're telling you they saw something, they saw something. It doesn't mean it was the thing that they think they saw. It doesn't mean it was a UFO. It doesn't mean it was Bigfoot. But they saw something that freaked them out. They saw something that impacted their lives. So I think that always deserves some respect and some attention, whether you believe them or not. The maybe having too much to drink trope, I agree wholeheartedly with that because skeptics love to come in with that. Like, oh, they were drinking or they were on drugs. And again, you have a place like New York City that has huge amounts of people doing drugs and tons of bars. So people get drunk every weekend. They're stumbling to the subways, they're stumbling to the bus stop. How many of them are reporting seeing Bigfoot? Like none. So again, a lot of these things aren't, especially alcohol. Alcohol is not a hallucinogen. You're not, I mean, I've been drunk a few times. I don't recommend it. But anybody out there who's been drunk, you're probably not hallucinating things. I mean, the world may move a little bit more slowly, you might be a little dizzy, but you're not going to see strange creatures. You're not going to see UFOs. You're not going to see Bigfoot. So, um, to talk about that, to just say, "Oh, you had too much to drink," is a cheap cop out. It's just attributing that to, "Oh, well, you had 2 beers, so that's why you saw Bigfoot." No, most guys who had 2 beers, you can handle 2 beers, unless you're doing serious, serious hallucinogens. Um, I'm gonna believe that you say you saw what you say you saw. Like, if you're not that drunk and you have, marijuana, you can be smoking pot. You're not gonna hallucinate that intensely where you're seeing Bigfoot or UFOs. So, interesting point there as well. And I agree with that. It is a silly argument. It's very dismissive. Just, oh, you were drunk or you had a beer or you took a toke of a joint. So that's why you saw this weird creature that you saw. And it just doesn't make sense because it doesn't happen 99 point 9999999% of the time. Um, as well as the animals up in the Finger Lakes. I'm, not saying that these creatures don't exist. I know in a lot of lakes, it's been disproven that there's not enough marine population there to support a population of these large animals, Loch Ness and some of the other lakes. I don't know about Cayuga Lake. I don't know what the population of fish is in there to support a large sauropod sort of lake monster. Uh, and I don't know if they could travel through the little rivers and streams. I mean, I've seen some of them, and they're not really big enough for a lake monster to crawl between lakes. That being said, people do see things. So what's in the lakes? I don't know. Again, I try not to be dismissive, but my personal opinion is that these are just large fish, sturgeon or gar, or And again, I'd love to be proven wrong because I think a world with these wonderful things in them is much more interesting than without them. So thanks to Naomi for that comment because I think she brings up many, many cool points and stuff that I agree with, even as a skeptic. So thanks, Naomi. Okay, so this next comment comes from frequent commenter, Fly Spec Cafe. They've been a fan of ours for a long time now. They comment on almost every video. They're awesome. And this comment comes from Christmas Ghost Stories. I was telling a story about how every Christmas day at my great grandmother's house, the doorbell would ring at a specific time. It was like 1:30 every Christmas, and every year there'd be nobody there. So we didn't know if it was a prank. We didn't know if it was a ghost. And then once my great grandfather passed away, it stopped. We kept having Christmas every year. But once he passed away, it had stopped. And he was elderly. He was blind. He was clearly not, he was in the house with us. He was clearly not outside ringing the bell. But Fly Spec Cafe says, that is odd about the doorbell, hard to explain away. I wonder if some of the other things are related to the concept of tulpa. So I wanted to talk about this because I've mentioned this before on the show very briefly, but tulpa are the concept of human beings with the power of their mind to sort of manifest physical beings. So a lot of people try to explain Bigfoot and UFOs and ghosts and all these things to tulpas, that our mind wants to see these things so badly or thinks they see these things so intensely that the mind actually manifests these things. So it's sort of like mind over matter. Um, and I have a couple of thoughts on this. On the one hand, I'm a psychology major. My degree's in psychology. I know that the human mind can do weird things sometimes, like hallucinating and dreaming and waking dreams and sleep paralysis. And there's all sorts of things that our brain can trick us into thinking that we're seeing. But I really struggle with this, that our brains can manifest something physical. It's almost like the Peter Pan thing, like, if you believe hard enough, you can fly too. And it's like, well, why couldn't we? If we can manifest Bigfoot, why couldn't we fly? Why couldn't we just jump off the building and say, oh, I think I can fly? Like, it's not going to happen. Um, and the brain is a wonderful, mysterious thing, and it can do many, many wonderful things. I don't think it can manifest something. Again, if you're talking hallucinations, if you're talking one person seeing something, absolutely. You're seeing something in the woods. You don't really get a good look at it, and your brain kind of fills in what's not really there, and you say, "Oh, I saw Bigfoot." That's one thing. It's another thing for two people in the woods. Sorry, my voice was cracked there. For two people in the woods to see Bigfoot and explain that as a tulpa, that one or both of these people manifested this thing out of thin air with their pure brain power. I don't like that. Don't believe it. Secondly, I don't like the process or the practice of explaining one unknown with another. So to say, oh, Bigfoot comes from UFOs, and there we got it. We solved the mystery. No, because we don't even know if UFOs exist. So you're explaining one mystery with another mystery. Or to say Bigfoot comes from another dimension. He steps through portals. We don't know if there are other dimensions. We don't know if portals exist. So to explain one unknown phenomena with another unknown phenomena is pointless and silly. Because we don't know. We don't know what one is. To say Bigfoot is an undiscovered primate and it's very earthly, that to me holds water because you're not using an unknown. You're not using an unproven. The mountain gorilla wasn't recognized by the Western world until like the early 20th century or late 19th century. Like you're talking like the 1800s or the early 1900s that we just didn't know that that existed. The panda, large animals that native populations were familiar with and would talk about, we were just like, nah, there's no such thing. And then, oh, yeah, there is. Now it's in our zoos. So again, not that that's what Bigfoot is, and not that Bigfoot isn't interdimensional. It could be. I don't know. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying I don't like that practice of saying, "Oh, that's just, from another dimension." Got it. We're good now. We've explained the mystery. I just don't like that. So, but I did want to address this because Fly Spec Cafe brings up the tulpa, and I think it's an interesting concept. So if you don't know much about it, go Google it. It's really interesting. Just don't think there's much to it. So let's move on to more comments. Okay, so to get back to the Sasquatch Chronicles controversy, this is one of the nicer comments, even though it's disagreeing with me. Um, but this one is from a user, Jonathan Smedley. And he says 16th November 2012 was nearly a full moon, by the way. 74% is close enough for me. So check your research before quoting it. Okay, Jonathan, we did check our research. Before we recorded the episode, we checked, and I even double checked because I was like, maybe I was wrong here. Like maybe I checked the wrong date. Maybe Scott checked the wrong date. Maybe we were both wrong before we did the research. Maybe the person who did this research paper had the wrong date. I checked like 5 different websites, and I'm going to put up a graphic here. I mean, the moon was a sliver. It was not a full moon that night. You can see the graphic right now. It was a November 16th, 2012. It was a waxing crescent, illumination 10%. So not 74%, nowhere near full. This was a tiny, tiny little sliver. It would not have been enough to illuminate all the Bigfoot in the woods that Wes and Woody were talking about. It was not a clear night weather-wise. Again, you can go and check that out. But we did our research, and this again just comes across as somebody who is blindly defending Wes, and maybe they Googled the wrong date. But like I said, we checked before we recorded just to make sure because we wanted to kind of debunk this report if we could have. But it was right on many things. And I checked like 5 different websites, and it was always this like waxing crescent, 10%, this little sliver of moon, not a full moon. And again, regardless, by the time Wes says he saw the Bigfoot creatures, the moon would have been below the horizon anyway. So regardless of its fullness, it would have been below the horizon. But as you can see here, clearly a waxing crescent, 10%, little sliver of moon, not anywhere near full. So just wanted to address that one. So this comment also from the Sasquatch Chronicles controversy. Again, this is one of the nicer comments. I'm trying not to get too much into the negativity here, but I just want to sort of show why we were a little bit taken aback, not surprised, but a little taken aback by the responses here. So this comes from Miss City. And she says, seriously, such minor details you're hanging on to. When one experiences such a life-changing event, certain parts of it are hard to remember / get straight. I think you need to just let it go, worry about you, and move on. And you made your point. He didn't need to fabricate a story in order to have a successful podcast. He would have been successful no matter what because Wes is just an overall super nice guy. People love him. He's kind. He's non-judgmental. He listens. He gives people a platform. You piss me off with this nonsense. So one, I don't think these are minor details. And two, even if they are minor details, if you can't get even minor details right, why should we believe that he saw not just one Bigfoot? He claims he saw a whole bunch of Bigfoot, like surrounding his car. He says these were huge. They looked like pro wrestlers, just like big, muscular creatures that were like surrounding his car, multiple creatures, not just one. And it lasted a long time. Like he's saying he saw these creatures in the moonlight. You're in the woods at night. When there's no moon, the woods are pitch black. You cannot see your hand in front of your face. So the moon is not a minor detail. It is a huge detail. It is sort of the linchpin of your story. If you can't see outside of your car because there's no outside illumination, how are you saying you saw these creatures? Again, if you're talking about you're seeing stars when it was a overcast, foggy night, if you can't get the small details right, why are we supposed to believe the bigger details? And that was really the point of us going over this, was just uh you know the the story hinges on some of these things. It's not just minor details about, well, did I see five Bigfoot or six? That I could let go because they're running around. If you're saying I don't remember, it was five or six or seven. I'm not going to hold someone to that because, yes, in that case, you're not sitting there saying, oh, okay, there's one, there's two. Like, they're running around, you're scared. You just know that there's more than four or five. But the full moon is sort of linchpin to his story, that's how he saw these things. That bothers me. Um, so yeah, and then to uh to defend him just because he's an overall super nice guy. People love him. He's kind, he's not judgmental. Lots of people are like that. And con people, people who confidence tricksters, are always nice and uh welcoming and non-judgmental. I mean, that's how they gain your confidence. And I'm not saying that he is or he's not. I'm just saying, to accept someone's story just because they're a nice person, that's not enough for me, and it shouldn't be enough for any of you. You know, Critical thinking is key here, and to say, does this story make sense? If it doesn't make sense, it's not true. And a lot of his story just doesn't make sense. There's provably wrong facts of his story. So if he doesn't know the moon phase, say, I don't know the moon phase, but he clearly says it was a full moon, and it clearly wasn't a full moon. It wasn't even close to a full moon. Why should we believe that he saw multiple Sasquatch surrounding his car? Just a point for me. So to hold on to. And but yeah, this is the type of comments we were getting. Just people standing up for Wes because he's a nice guy. And I don't debate that. He does seem like a very nice guy. I just question why his story didn't make any sense. All right, so some more fun comments here. These are just cool things I pulled, and I couldn't get to everybody's comments. I mean, there were tons of comments this year, so I was trying to pick like a nice cross section of things to talk about. But this comes from David Vaughn, and this is from our Bigfoot in Connecticut, or Connecticut Bigfoot sightings episode. And I guess I was talking about tree knocks, and I don't like tree knocks because, again, we don't know what is making the tree knocks. Again, if you see a Bigfoot and he's holding a stick and banging it against a tree, that's a story I want to hear. If you're just in the woods and you hear a couple of knocks on a tree, it could be anything. It could be branches falling, it could be trees breaking, it could be the wood popping just from the change in temperature. It could be other Bigfooters out there banging on trees, and then you're banging on a tree and you're talking to each other, all of you thinking you're talking to Bigfoot. But I thought this comment was funny from David Vaughn, who says, here's the other problem with knocks. We don't know what they're saying. Maybe they're signaling runaway or humans to eat here. So yeah, we're trying to communicate with these things without even knowing what we're saying. So we do these howls, we do these tree knocks. And when I say we, I just mean the Bigfoot community in general. Uh, because that seems to be a huge thing. The tree knocks, and go out there and howl, and we don't know what we're saying. So even if you accept the premise that, yes, these are Bigfoot doing the tree knocks, these are Bigfoot howling, what are they saying? They're saying something. It's communication. So what does two tree knocks mean? Let them go. And three tree knocks means go get them. And you're banging the tree three times. You're basically signaling Bigfoot to come eat you. So I thought that was a cool comment because, yeah, I had not even thought of that. My whole thing is just, it's probably other Bigfooters out there banging on trees and you're talking to each other. But this is a good point. What are we actually saying? So thank you, David. So this next comment comes from user Sorry Not Sorry, and he had commented on my first story about the Winstead Wildman and Bigfoot in Connecticut. So I had read some articles from the BFRO website, and he had mentioned that he had posted on the BFRO website. So for my next episode on Connecticut Bigfoot sightings, many episodes later, I covered his story because I thought it was a really cool encounter. So he just wrote in to say, thank you for covering my encounter without any embellishments. Like I said before, I can only speculate as to what it was. It sure has intrigued me over the years, and to this day, I still hike as often as I can and off trail as much as possible. Canaan Mountain is my current go-to place, but no significant incidents or findings there. Sorry Not Sorry was out fishing. And again, if you go to like the Bigfoot sightings in Connecticut episode, you'll see Like the main thumbnail is basically just this guy fishing and in the water is a Bigfoot. And in his story, he didn't actually see anything. He just heard these howls. And why I picked his story and loved his story is because he doesn't say that it was Bigfoot. He just says he was out fishing and he heard these ungodly screams and howls. And he's an avid outdoorsman. He's been out fishing and hunting and hiking for many, many, many years, his whole life. So he kind of is familiar with the sounds of the woods, a fox or a fisher or a bobcat. And this was like nothing he'd ever heard before. So again, I don't say it's definitely Bigfoot. He doesn't say it's definitely Bigfoot. So I love stories like that where even the witness is just saying, "Hey, I heard something. I can't explain it. Maybe it was Bigfoot, or maybe it was this, or maybe it was that." And I love stories like that because they're not trying to push an agenda. They're not saying, "I definitely saw a dog man," or "I definitely saw this." Just saying, "Hey, I had this weird encounter and I wanted you guys to know about it." And again, he's saying he hasn't had any significant incidents or findings since. So this is not someone who's like, "Oh, and then, the 27th time I saw Bigfoot was in 1997." He had this one encounter. And, you know, even when I asked him to come on the show, he was just like, "I don't think my encounter is worthy of that." I do. I love stories like that because I think those are the true mysteries. It's not somebody saying, "Oh, I saw five Bigfoot walking through my backyard and they stopped off and had a beer with me, and then, I leave them an apple every Thanksgiving." And that to me is ridiculous. But stories like this, these are really what intrigue me, because what was making that howling? Like that this guy who's experienced and wise about the woods couldn't figure out what it was, and it spooked him. So stories like this are awesome. So sorry, not sorry. Thank you. So this comment, I love this comment. And again, it's from our friend Fly Spec Cafe. And I picked this one just because it's a little um, palate cleanser after the Sasquatch Chronicles comments. Um, but this is kind of what I strive to be. And I'm glad that people, and his comment isn't the only one like this. There's other comments in other videos, but this one I think just summed it up very well. And I appreciate the comment here, and I will read it. You continue to maintain the standards of credible witnesses, matter-of-factly told stories, no great rush to foregone conclusions, and the added plus of devil's advocate. This is in sharp contrast to a certain TV show that attributes every unexplained thing to ETs. Kudos. So thank you, Flyspec Cafe. This is kind of what I try to put out there, that I'm trying to pull credible witnesses. Whether I believe the story or not, that's a different story. Matter-of-factly told stories. No great rush to foregone conclusions. Again, I'm not here to judge or to say this is definitely or definitely not. And the added plus of devil's advocate, I've mentioned that prior in this episode, that I try to give both sides, that even if I think the story is amazing and a really good sighting, I always try to play devil's advocate a little bit, not because I'm trying to disrespect the witness, not because I'm trying to discredit them, but all possibilities have to be looked at. As Captain Kirk said, I like to believe in possibilities. So I'm always looking for possibilities. I'm always looking for, could this have been something else? And sometimes that's a stretch. Sometimes it's like, well, could it have been a bear? Could it have been a man in a ghillie suit? Could it have been an airplane? I try to just throw that out there just to get people to think, just for critical thinking, not to discredit anyone. But that's kind of what I try to present here. So Fly Spec Cafe, I appreciate this comment more than you know. This was awesome. This just made me smile. It made my day when I read it. And I'm glad that I'm reaching the audience that I reach, and I'm glad that the people who just want to blindly believe either just don't watch or move on or whatever. If they're still here, that's great, but I think if you're into the paranormal, if you're into cryptozoology, if you're into the unexplained, you have to have an open mind. And that doesn't mean we can't disagree. We can disagree on things, but I think you have to say, this is what I believe, this is my opinion, this is my theory, not that this is fact. I'm never going to say Bigfoot is definitely an undiscovered primate, and you should never say Bigfoot is definitely a portal hopping interdimensional being. We just don't know. You can believe that, and I will respect that, but I just ask that you respect my position as well. So again, I try to give all points of view, play devil's advocate, and let you guys in the audience just make up your own minds about the stories that are presented here. So Fly Spec Cafe, thank you. Okay, so this next comment comes from another frequent viewer, longtime fan, Laurie Rober, and she's talking about an episode I really enjoyed doing. Didn't get tons of hits, but I thought it was a really cool episode, A Glitch in the Matrix, and where I was just kind of talking about like weird things that happen that we can't really categorize into any other paranormal category. It's just, I saw a double of a person, or I got a phone call from someone I shouldn't have gotten a phone call from, or just these weird things that like just makes it seem like we're living in some sort of simulation and the computer glitched out and made two of something, or something was floating in the air when it shouldn't have been. So a lot of cool stuff in there. So go check out that episode, A Glitch in the Matrix. But Lori tells a quick incident of something that happened to her. So she writes, interesting and fun episode. I have a story. Several years ago, I was visiting my small hometown. As I drove down the main street towards an intersection with a traffic light, I started feeling anxious and sad. Thinking someone was in trouble on the sidewalk, I slowed down and started looking around. Even though I had the green light, I hesitated still. Suddenly, from the side street, a red sports car blew through their red light, going real fast a few feet in front of me. Thankfully, the sad feelings caused me to slow down, or they would have T-boned me. Who or what prevented this accident, I don't know. So, yeah, that was something else I talked about in this episode, of just weird coincidences that sort of stop us from doing something that if we had continued doing would have like seriously injured us or killed us. So it just makes you wonder, like, why did that happen? Why did she just suddenly have this sad feeling and start looking around? Because if that hadn't happened, she could have been really seriously hurt or killed, and we don't want that. We want Lori to stick with us for a long time. So cool story. And again, it doesn't really quite fit in with any other sort of paranormal category. It's or phenomenon. It's just coincidence, a glitch in the matrix. Just this weird feeling out of nowhere. She couldn't really pinpoint it. No real reason why. But then, like, wow, like someone would have T-boned me if I'd gone through the light, if I didn't have this feeling. So what glitched out here to save my life? So, and again, we can get into like, is that religious? Is that God? Is that, kismet? I don't know. I'm not going to categorize that, but very cool story. So thank you, Lori. And we're going to hear from Lori again. Okay, so these comments come from our episode, The Haunting Music of Riversend. So Riversend, my friends Zach and Olivia, they are in this band Riversend, and they do our intro music and the outro music, the song called Moonlight. So I had them on the show because I just wanted to talk to them and just see how they came up with their music, how they came up with their band. So a few comments from that, and I'm going to read those. So the first one comes from my buddy Josh, who I go camping with and frequent co-host on this show. Great episode, very nice couple, great music as well. So talented, interesting stories as well. I still remember that one episode with the three sisters and their giggle fest, and them trying not to laugh and doing their best to hold in their laughter on camera. LOL. So yeah, that was our first Halloween episode with Paula, Olivia, and Rachel, and they were telling a lot of cool ghost stories. And it was like an hour and a half episode, and their sisters and stuff was happening with the camera, and a lot of laughter, and it's just like a very fun episode. Again, one of our more popular episodes, one of the highest rated episodes from our first year. So if you want to check that one out, our first Halloween episode from 2022. I will link to all this stuff in the description below so you guys can find it easier. But yeah, very, very cool. And yeah, Olivia and Zach had some cool ghost stories to tell in this episode as well. And Zach is just a great, great guitarist, very talented. Olivia's got a beautiful singing voice. So check them out. Again, their links are in our description every week so that you can find them, because I believe in them that much, and their music is just so cool. And as promised, another comment from Lori. And Lori has commented on a few different episodes about the music. I mean, even when the show wasn't about the music, she just kind of throw a comment out there like, oh, like I love that intro music. But on this episode, she says, love that theme music for your show, Moonlight. Awesome singer, talented musicians. Glad to hear an interview with Riversend. So yeah, it was so cool having them on. Just great people. I'd never met Zach before, but Olivia I've known for a while. But they're just so talented, just really, really great musicians, and she's a great singer with a beautiful voice. So definitely check them out. So this next comment comes from my friend Stephanie McKeon, and we go back to our high school days together. So Steph's a good friend of mine. And I know she watches regularly and very cool. I know she was into ghost hunting for a while back in the day and just into the paranormal and stuff. But she commented on, well, she's commented on a lot of shows, but I picked this one from UFO sightings over Staten Island. Fun show. iPhones are notorious for producing lens flares more than its competitors. So you're right about the last photo you showed. What are your thoughts about UFO hunting and tools/equipment people recommend to try to find UFOs? So yeah, in that episode, I had shown a photo of someone on a UFO report database, and it had a photo of just lens flare. They were taking a picture, and the sun was in the sky, and there's a little green photo at the bottom, towards the bottom of the photo. But it's, and they're saying it's a UFO. Not that they saw it at the time, but just like afterwards, like, oh, there's a UFO in my photo. And it's just lens flare. It's just like this weird lens flare that any bright object. So if you take a picture at night of like a street light, if you take a picture of the moon, you're going to get this little artifact on the lens reflected. And as Steph says, it's like iPhones are notorious for that. So you got to be real careful when you take pictures and look back at them and you see these little orbs or these little lights and say, well, is that a UFO or is that just a reflection of the sun? But Steph also asks about what my thoughts are in UFO hunting and the tools and equipment people use. That is hard to say. I think night vision is good. I think binoculars are great. I think if you're looking for UFOs, you got to just use basic equipment like binoculars, like night vision. Your main goal there is just to make sure you're not seeing an airplane. Make sure you're not seeing a structure of an airplane. Make sure you're not seeing, again, with binoculars, you might be able to see these things like the navigation lights, the red and green. And, if you see those things, it's probably an airplane. If all of these planes have that, the FAA rules say that they have to have these running lights and these navigation lights. So binoculars would be great. Night vision would be great. Probably not in the city so much, but in the darker areas where there's not as much light pollution, just to kind of find UFOs. But other than that, I'm not sure. Cameras, video cameras, still cameras, good camera so that if you do see something that you can zoom in a lot and take a good picture of it so people can analyze it. That would be my recommendation for that. So, Steph, thank you for always watching. All right, the last comment I'm going to deal with today, this one just warmed my heart. This is from Philip at Class Graphics, and he did our logo. So let me read this, and I'll tell you a little bit about the story. I hope you'll remember me as the designer of your logo. It's been a while, and I just stumbled onto your channel and wanted to say hello and best wishes. I really enjoyed this podcast, Bigfoot Sightings in New York, and I'm looking forward to viewing and listening to the others. Best regards, Philip, Class Graphics. So I dealt with Philip through a third-party company when I was looking for a logo for the podcast. Like I said, I had a blog called The Occult Section, and I was rebranding into Odd and Untold, and I needed like a really good logo. And while I'm good with Photoshop, I'm not really good at crafting logos. And so I outsourced it to this other company, and they kind of have designers working through them who can kind of bid on the project. And I had like 6 or 7 people working on my logo and didn't really like any of them. They just weren't really hitting the vibe I was looking for. And I just love this Odd and Untold logo that I use. And you have 7 days with this company to have your project bid on, and people will send you samples and you can kind of tweak them. And again, I wasn't really getting anything that I loved. So, some of it was really good, but maybe not for like a paranormal podcast. Other stuff just looked outdated. And then Philip came along and sent me this logo. And it was basically the logo as you see it now, the female version. And I asked him to make a few little tweaks because the leg it almost looked like she was, like her leg had been amputated. So I just asked him if he could like change the angle a little bit. And he did, like, very quickly, and it looked perfect. And I kind of just threw it out there and was like, oh, can you also do like a male version of this? Because I thought it was really cool that he did a woman, but I was like, oh, that might be really cool to have like 2 versions of this. And he was like, well, I'm really not supposed to, but I'm going to do it for you. So he did it. So now I have a male and a female version. So one version is the woman in the woods and the other one is the man in the woods. And he also did this awesome thing where he sent it to me as like a PNG layer. So I could change the color of the logo. I could use it on merchandise. Like, it was just a really great experience working with Philip. He was just so communicative, so polite. And again, he did extra work for me that he did not get paid for. And it was one of those things like where as soon as I accepted the logo, they cut communication off between us, this third party company. And so I couldn't reach out to him. I couldn't ever find. I knew his name was Philip. I didn't know Class Graphics. I just knew his name was Philip, and he was like working with his company. And as soon as I accepted the project, they were like, "Okay, we will pay your designer, and the graphic is now yours." But I couldn't really talk to him any longer and say how much I appreciated the logo and how great it was. And so I'm so happy that Philip found us, just by looking online. He saw the logo. Hey, that's mine. I designed that. So we went back and forth in the comments. So if you go to the Bigfoot sightings in New York City episode, which was a cool episode, I love that episode. You'll see our comments back and forth to each other. But if you need a logo done, I highly, highly recommend you go to Philip at Class Graphics. I'm going to link to him again in the description below so you can find his channel and his website and work with him. Like I said, he's just a pleasure, a joy to work with. He was just so communicative, so accommodating. Anything I wanted, he did. And he went above and beyond. And like I said, he said, I'm really not supposed to give you two versions of a logo, but I'm going to do it. And anything I asked for, he did it. And he just went above and beyond. So give him a like. If you need a logo done, check him out. He does great work. I've checked out his channel and his website and seen some of the other stuff he's done, and it's all great. And I love my logo. He just did a wonderful job. He just totally captured what I was looking for. The woman in the forest and the claw reaching around her and a UFO hovering there. It's such a cool logo, and I love it. And Philip was great. So check him out. And that I think is going to do it. I'm running a little bit long on this episode, and I couldn't get to all your comments and questions. Oh, Ethan had a question. Uh, I'm going to get to that. Just because Ethan, he was on the show Cat Squatch very early on in our first season. My friend Ethan, and he asked if I had any pending ghost investigations coming up in the future. And right now we don't. It's just very hard to do paranormal investigating these days. I still consult, so if people email me, I will work with them. We don't do any famous places. We don't do any businesses really. The ghost hunting it was really fun for a while, and then it turned like into a spectator sport. And every investigation we went on, we told people like, all right, one person from your family or business can be there to kind of accompany us and supervise and unlock doors or whatever. And we just kept going to these investigations, and there'd be 20 people there, there'd be 15 people there, they'd be drinking, they'd be playing music, and I just said no more, And then the pandemic hit, and each of us in the group, we all kind of had different things going on, who had kids, who got married, who, got a different job, and it's time consuming and the scheduling doesn't work. So I don't have any investigations pending. That phase of my life may be over for the most part. I hate to say it, but I still do consult with people. I have people email me and I will talk to them on the phone. I will go to their home, usually try to give them some advice, but I haven't had to do a full investigation for a while. I can usually debunk it or give some advice before an investigation. So I don't need to go in with the cameras and my team and do all that. So it's a little bit sad that that's over, but I think the market has just been flooded by ghost hunting groups and the TV shows, and a lot of these famous places now want to charge you a lot of money to come in, whereas before they just let us do it for free. Now they want to charge you money, and there's all sorts of terms and conditions, and it lost its appeal for me. So we did it for many years. We had a lot of fun doing it, a lot of cool experiences, a lot of weird experiences, but nothing coming up in the future. And I did have more questions, but this episode's going long, so I will save them for another time. If you guys have questions or stories you want to share or anything, you just want to reach out, jason@oddanduntold.com, shoot me an email, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. But thanks again for joining us for our year-end show. It was a great year, so I appreciate all of you. The show's all about you guys. If you're listening to this or watching this, the show is for you because you are our audience, and there's no show without you. Well, there is, but why would I do it if no one's watching? So thank you guys for watching, for listening, for supporting us, for being here with us. And we hope to have some great shows for you in the new year here. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I will see you guys in 2024. Until then.